Changes in life are always accompanied by a certain anxiety and leave a mark, but divorce leaves real wounds, especially when the divorce was caused by the brazen betrayal of one of the spouses. My wife turned out to be a real fraud, and she was not left without consequences along with her lover. I waited until about a year after the divorce before calling Winslow Hubble. By then, things had settled and memories had dimmed, though not for me. They remained fresh, tender, and powerful enough to drive me forward as I strategized the second phase of my revenge. The initial step was finalizing the divorce itself, which happened swiftly. Neither Ashley nor I had the financial resources to make it a drawn-out legal battle, and once the reasons for our split became known, her parents withdrew their support for prolonging the conflict. As for dividing our assets, it was relatively smooth. We didn't own much, rented our home, and earned similar incomes, despite Ashley's attempts to complicate matters. She hadn't wanted the separation, but I did, and it took her some time to accept that she no longer controlled our relationship. I initially tried to gently persuade her, but when that failed, I resorted to threatening to expose videos of her infidelity to everyone she knew. That threat quickly convinced her to agree. So, less than a year after Ashley had her affairs in our marital bed, we had separate apartments, bank accounts, and lives. Our circle of friends had always been distinct. She socialized with the Brooks Brothers financial district crowd, while mine were more of the former starving writer-turned-corporate sellout in Doc Martens variety. As it turned out, bloodthirsty jackals and mischievous otters don't mix well. I considered punishing Ashley for her affair, but ultimately I concluded that the divorce itself was punishment enough. In just a few nights of regrettable intimacy, she forfeited a wonderful marriage, a cozy apartment she couldn't afford alone, and her fast track to a promotion at work. She was employed at Pierce, Bateman, Potter, Gordon, and McDuke, often referred to as Pierce Bateman, an investment firm that valued its stable, married employees. Sadly, Ashley no longer fit that description. While she could still progress in her career, it would undoubtedly be slower and more challenging. At times, I wondered which loss hurt her the most: our charming place on the Upper West Side, our marriage, or her clear path to a corner office. Deep down, though, I think I already knew. In the divorce, Ashley got custody of Winslow. Perhaps she would have preferred him to stay with me, but she made her choice, and I had no qualms about letting her deal with the consequences. You see, Winslow Hubble was my wife's lover. No, scratch that. Lover isn't the right word. What happened between Winslow and Ashley had nothing to do with love or even affection. He wasn't her boyfriend either. Since our divorce, I haven't had my ex-wife followed. In fact, I've done everything possible to completely remove myself from her life. But I'm sure she hasn't given him the time of day since I sent her a video of them together. If I had to label Winslow, I'd call him the man who unraveled my marriage. He wasn't the initiator, and he didn't benefit. At least not after the few nights he spent with me. Winslow was a tool, a means to an end, destined to be used and then discarded. Winslow's phone rang twice before he answered. The double ring was a habit from his prep school days, carried through college and now into his job at Pierce Bateman. It was part of his strategy. Never appear eager, never seem desperate, never pick up on the first ring. If you knew the trick, it seemed rather sad. Winslow himself might be described the same way. His voice came through aristocratic and arrogant. Winslow Hubble speaking. Hey Winslow, it's Charles Walker. Chuck Walker. That's a blast from the past. There was a smirk evident in his tone. His leather seat squeaked as he leaned back comfortably. What can I do for you, Chuck? Got some money burning a hole in your pocket? Winslow likely knew that my savings were insignificant compared to Pierce Bateman's usual clientele. Jerk. No, I'm good for now, Winnie. I chuckled, knowing the nickname would get under his skin. I think it's about time we had a chat. Winslow snorted. I can't imagine what we'd have to talk about, Chuck, or should I say, cuck. Our worlds don't exactly intersect anymore. He chuckled softly. And I doubt you're flying much these days. Can't say I'm inclined to grab a drink with you. Well, Winnie, here's the thing. You still have a wife, and I still have a video. I guess I should provide some background on my ex-wife and myself. I'm Charles, Chuck, Walker, formerly a journalist who now earns his living editing lightweight articles about the philanthropic endeavors of Polylever, a large and well-known corporation. It's not the most fulfilling job, but it pays well. The people are pleasant. And it ensures my retirement won't consist of just cat food and a brief heroin phase. Ashley, on the other hand, is an investment banker navigating the hustle of Wall Street. While my office is tinged with slightly tarnished idealism, Pierce? Bateman thrives on the firm belief that money defines its own morality. In short, if it's profitable, it's deemed good. Despite our vastly different careers, Ash and I complemented each other well. Both of us were 30, old enough to contemplate children seriously, but young enough not to dwell on it excessively. I stood at 5'9", with brown hair and green eyes, keeping fit by hitting the gym 3 times weekly and walking 5 to 10 miles daily. Ash, at 5'6", sported dark brown hair, piercing blue eyes, and a figure that lingered in my dreams, both before and after we tied the knot. We first crossed paths at a We Were Promised Jetpacks concert in Brooklyn, where she accidentally spilled beer on my third favorite t-shirt and I managed to snag her number. I spent a lot of time talking to her that evening. We skipped the opening act, a Scottish reggae band, and enjoyed our beers in the small outdoor smoking area. Having been on the New York dating scene for a while, I quickly realized she was something special, beautiful and brilliant, with a playful sense of humor and a straightforward manner that always caught me off guard. Later, I found out she was the youngest of 5, with 4 older brothers who shared her blunt honesty and mischief. By the following weekend, we had plans to visit the Muppets exhibit at the Museum of the Moving Image. There, I discovered that the wit and intelligence I admired on our first meeting were still apparent, even after the effects of alcohol had worn off. If anything, she was even more impressive when I was sober enough to appreciate the subtleties of her dry humor. Within 6 months, I proposed. A year later, we were married. That was 4 years ago. Maintaining a marriage in a bustling city isn't easy, and we both put in the effort. I knew Ash sometimes had late nights at the office, and she understood when I had to rush to meet deadlines or finish my freelance articles. We tried to synchronize our subway rides and organize lunches, but some days we only managed to see each other briefly in the morning and for an hour or 2 at night. Despite this, we always kept weekends free, stayed in touch through texts and emails, and never, absolutely never, forgot an important date or anniversary, even the seemingly trivial ones like Spilled Beer Day or First Real Date Day. I discovered that Ash was a versatile character. In museums, she displayed intelligence and knowledge gracefully, never flaunting it. During hikes in the Adirondacks, she transformed into a rugged and competitive companion, brushing off scrapes and racing me along the trails. After a few cocktails, she became playful and whimsical, enthusiastically joining my F. Scott Fitzgerald-inspired fantasies of youthful extravagance in New York. We even dared to jump into fountains and indulged in passionate encounters behind trees in Central Park, the thrill heightened by the risk of being caught. As our relationship progressed, from dating to living together, marrying and building a life, Ash revealed more facets of herself, a quirky sense of humor, and a tender vulnerability, sharing these sides of her personality unexpectedly. At work, the chameleon-like Ash showed her ambitious side. I glimpsed this aspect every Thursday night at Pierce, Bateman's weekly happy hour. The firm reserved a back room at 3 Olives, a financial district haunt blending stodgy with hip, adorned with burgundy leather club chairs, hunting prints, and uninspiring British-inspired cuisine. Attendance wasn't mandatory, but skipping out, especially without a spouse, suggested indifference to career advancement. Thus, I spent every Thursday navigating conversations with Ashley's financial colleagues, absorbing office gossip, and observing her adeptness at working the room. Most of Ashley's colleagues were self-congratulatory former fraternity brothers, and many of their wives were the type of meticulously groomed blondes who had spent college studying art appreciation or early childhood education while searching for wealthy husbands. I tried to fit in with them, but after endless discussions about rooftop bars and Jimmy Choo shoes, I felt like I was losing my mind. Luckily, Martha, who insisted on being called Marty, came to my rescue. At first glance, Winslow Hubbell's wife looked like just another thin, bleached blonde wife of a Pierce or Bateman. However, my assumptions about her were shattered one evening when Abby Van Vorten began boasting about her husband's newfound passion for curling, a Canadian sport involving sliding granite discs across ice. "Let me get this straight," Martha muttered. "She's bragging because her New England blue blood husband is spending a fortune to learn a game played by Canadian rednecks?" I caught a glimpse of the smirk on Martha's face. It dawned on me that Martha had thrown out her version of a conversation-stopping challenge, a move aimed at discovering if I was on her wavelength or just another conformist. "Whether redneck or Rockefeller, inbreeding seems to be a global phenomenon," I quipped in response. "Though it's a risky sport. Hard to play polo with crossed eyes." And just like that, we hit it off. Marty, I discovered, embodied the archetype of Martha Stewart, from her fierce ambition to her bone-dry sense of humor, as arid as the Mojave. Like the illustrious Mrs. Stewart, Martha Hubbell, formerly known as Petrowski, began life in modest circumstances in a blue-collar Pittsburgh neighborhood. Through determination, she ascended to a respected college and eventually secured a promising marriage with a man whose Anglo-Saxon surname carried more prestige than her Polish-Lithuanian roots. While employed at a prominent publishing house, Martha was already establishing herself as a notable figure. Yet, it was widely assumed she would soon resign to focus on starting a family of little Hubbells. During Pierce Bateman's seemingly endless happy hours, Marty and I often sought each other out in a quiet corner, exchanging witty remarks and passing the time with a game we called Ridiculous Haircut Bingo. This involved scanning the crowd of New Yorkers, identifying hairstyles reminiscent of Goering, Heydrich, Goebbels. In places like Three Olives, saturated with testosterone and upscale hair products, it was, to put it mildly, an environment ripe for our observations. While Marty and I exchanged quiet remarks, our spouses mingled with the crowd. They took different approaches. Ashley, still burdened by student loans, spent her time mostly sipping club soda, using her intelligence and directness to connect with the men in sharp suits. Meanwhile, Winslow, whose childhood likely revolved around yacht clubs and exclusive golf courses, enjoyed gin and tonics while regaling his former fraternity brothers with off-color jokes. The class distinction couldn't have been clearer. Ashley was striving to integrate into a lifestyle Winslow took for granted, while he coasted along, assured that if he stumbled, another fraternity brother, investment firm, or cocktail party awaited. Rumor had it, as a last resort, he could always return to his parents and a cushy position managing the family foundation. Thus unfolded our Thursdays, Ashley navigating happy hour like a determined predator, Winslow floating contentedly like a playful seal, and Marty and I sipping cocktails, observing the spectacle and absorbing gossip like quiet bystanders. It wasn't exactly my idea of leisure, but it pleased Ashley, and Marty made it enjoyable, so I didn't grumble about donning a suit and playing supportive spouse. Our marriage was a delicate balancing act, orchestrated by two relatively young individuals with overly demanding jobs and a connection too vital to neglect. It was a union characterized by quiet admiration and fervent excitement, built on principles and concessions typical of a young couple striving to establish successful careers, a home, children, and the quintessential American dream. It was challenging, yet we diligently nurtured it, and it proved successful for us. However, it wasn't without its difficulties. Ashley sometimes exhibited jealousy that struck me as excessive, despite her obvious attractiveness. On my part, I battled my own insecurities. In a bustling city of 8 million, where the allure of something better was ever present, I found solace in knowing my wife chose me, though it was also a source of comfort that she valued me so deeply. A more significant issue arose from Ashley's strong sense of justice. While she navigated the morally flexible world of Wall Street with adaptability, her personal ethics were unwavering and rigid. When she felt wronged, Ashley swiftly sought retribution, which, in my view, could be perplexing, covert, and somewhat sinister. In general, Ash followed a specific process. Upon becoming convinced she'd been wronged, she would confront the offender and make her case, often with intensity. Typically, a sincere apology or multiple apologies, along with some form of penance, could restore balance. However, if the offender persisted in denying guilt or failed to repent adequately, Ashley's sense of justice would take over. Outwardly, Ash might let the argument settle and life would appear unaffected. Behind the scenes, though, she meticulously gathered evidence, made judgments, and quietly imposed what she deemed appropriate consequences. There were no appeals, no halting of her decisions, and no higher authority. Once Ashley reached her verdict, she trusted her judgment implicitly and dismissed any suggestions of overreaction. I often wondered about the origin of Ash's sense of justice. I presumed it stemmed from her childhood experiences, from being a little girl who occasionally found herself at the mercy of her 4 imposing brothers. Direct confrontation was futile, and bringing her grievances to her parents risked being labeled a tattletale, a serious accusation in a household full of boys. It was easy to picture young Ashley devising fitting punishments for her brothers and carrying them out, all while maintaining the facade of the angelic, younger sister. Perhaps Ashley's early years as a guerrilla warrior against her brothers also explained why her punishments often seemed disproportionately harsh. In my estimation, for every offense, she typically exacted about 50% more in retribution. I sometimes pondered whether she still viewed herself as the powerless younger sister, engaged in covert battles against her older siblings. Or maybe that extra 50% was a court processing fee she added on for the time spent playing judge, jury, and executioner. For instance, one Sunday a few months after we got married, Ash and I were decluttering our apartment, clearing out the accumulated junk from closets and corners, gathering clothes for Goodwill, and bidding farewell to college textbooks we knew we'd never open again. By the time we finished, the living room overflowed with bags and boxes, and I was shuttling debris to the dumpster down the street and Goodwill around the block. In Walkerland, all seemed well as we contemplated the newfound space in our closets and on our bookshelves. 40 minutes later, I found myself on the sofa, beer in hand, while Ashley stood over me, visibly seething with anger. It turned out a bag intended for the dry cleaners had mysteriously vanished. After confirming it wasn't in the trash and being denied access to search Goodwill's warehouse, my wife had nowhere to direct her frustration but towards me. Apparently, I hadn't been thorough enough when I removed the bags from our apartment, and now Ash was without 3 dresses. I apologized repeatedly. What else could I do? But it was futile. After my 3rd apology, I finished my beer in one gulp, announced I needed space, and took a long walk. When I returned hours later, 3 new dresses hung in the closet, and Ashley was fast asleep. The next morning, Ashley wasn't there when I woke up. I went through my usual morning routine and began getting ready for work. However, my preparation hit a snag when I realized I couldn't find any pants. There was nothing in the closet, nothing in the laundry. Not even my suit pants were anywhere to be seen. I sent Ashley a text. "Honey, have you seen my pants? I can't find them." Her response came back immediately. "Check Goodwill." Struggling to control my anger, I eventually found a pair of dark sweats in my gym bag. They weren't ideal, but I was already late, so they'd have to do until I could pick something up at Uniqlo during lunch. That evening, when I returned home, there were 3 new pairs of pants waiting for me. As I hung them in the closet, Ashley watched me with an oddly satisfied expression. Later, I left again for a walk. Being in the apartment with her was unbearable. In total, I had lost 3 dresses due to a genuine mix-up, and 12 pairs of pants, including 2 irreplaceable pairs of suit trousers, had been sacrificed in what felt like an exaggerated punishment. I couldn't comprehend Ashley's reasoning behind such a disproportionate response. It was the first time since our young marriage began that I started to question if I had made a mistake. A few days passed before we regained our equilibrium. Ashley never offered an apology, but my persistent silence seemed to affect her. Over the next several evenings, she brought home dinners from my favorite restaurants. Then on Wednesday, I discovered a J. Crew gift card on my dresser. That night I had enough pants to last a week, and when I joined Thursday's happy hour at Pierce Bateman, Ashley greeted me with a warm hug and kiss. It felt like we were back on track. Besides teaching me to always check trash bags before taking them out, the pants incident taught me an important lesson about Ashley's approach to vengeance. While she found some satisfaction in being an agent of retribution, it wasn't a source of joy for her. She viewed revenge as a solemn duty rather than a pastime, something that had to be endured to restore balance to the world. Replacing my 10 pairs of missing pants cost us around $500, not including the incomplete suits. Money wasn't tight for us, but replenishing our wardrobe strained our finances for a month or two. Yet Ashley faced our situation with stoicism, as if the expense of our new clothes was a necessary toll we had to pay before moving forward. Ashley never quite matched the severity of the missing pants incident with her payback, but occasionally I'd catch that peculiar, satisfied expression flitting across her face. Typically when I stumbled upon something strange, like salt in my cereal, or discovering my current book had vanished. Over time, I came to accept it as part of our shared life. I had my quirks, such as insisting peanut butter should always be kept in the fridge, and Ashley had hers, like her occasional penchant for intense revenge. Yet, I reasoned, loving someone means embracing the entirety of who they are, the passionate lover who enjoys risky encounters in Central Park, and the vengeful force who might raid your closet unexpectedly. I learned to apologize when I could, although I didn't want to constantly fear my wife's wrath. Sometimes I stood firm, bracing for her stormy retaliation to sweep through our apartment. We struck a balance that usually suited us well. That is, until Caitlin entered the picture. Let me start by clarifying that I wasn't involved in Caitlin's hiring process. Those decisions were made several levels above me, using a vetting method that seemed as arcane as drawing a pentagram and sacrificing a goat. During the one review session I participated in, I highlighted Caitlin's extensive journalism experience and her ability to consistently deliver top-notch work under tight deadlines, which clearly set her apart from other candidates. Our HR leaders considered our feedback and, to my surprise, actually followed our recommendation to hire her. Despite Caitlin's impressive credentials and my limited role in her hiring, none of this mattered to Ashley when she met Caitlin at a company-sponsored weekend run. Caitlin, in addition to being an experienced writer and editor, also possessed striking physical characteristics, a toned physique, and a beautiful face. While her usual work attire of loose sweaters and jeans concealed her figure, this was not the case with the spandex leggings and thin hoodie she wore at the event. Ashley and Caitlin engaged in the typical pleasantries, complimenting each other on their running gear and chatting casually about mundane topics. To an observer, it might have seemed like a harmless interaction between a wife and her husband's colleague, but I detected a steely look in Ashley's eyes that hinted at potential trouble for my marital harmony. On the way back to our apartment that afternoon, Ash was unusually quiet. I sensed trouble brewing. She was clearly stewing in anger, silently preparing to unleash it. Knowing I had to defuse the situation before I lost more than just my pants, I'd only just restocked to 7 pairs. I decided to speak up. "I'm glad you got to meet Caitlin. You two seem to get along well," I ventured. "Yes, Charles. She's charming," my wife muttered, her tone icy. "Where have you been hiding her?" "Charles, definitely not a good sign." "Hiding, sweetheart?" I grinned. "We don't socialize much with my colleagues. Today might have been the first time you've met half of them." "Don't be ridiculous. I saw them all at the Christmas party." I maintained my smile. "That was 8 months ago, Ash. Besides, many have moved up, changed roles, or left altogether. And Caitlin? What makes her so special? She has a BA in English from Brown with a focus on business writing. 5 years in journalism, 3 in digital marketing. Not too different from my background, I chuckled. Except for the Ivy League degree. At this rate, she might end up my boss. Her demeanor softened slightly, though tension still lingered. So you'll be reporting to her? I glanced at Ash, noting the steel in her eyes, but relieved to see a hint of a smile. No chance, darling, I reassured her with a grin. You're the only one I answer to. And what we have isn't exactly work. Ash's smile widened, and as soon as we returned to our apartment, we began to compete to see who would be in bed faster. It was a wonderful evening. The following weeks went pretty smoothly, although it took some time and a lot of intimacy before the tension subsided. Meanwhile, Ashley was leaving bites all over my body, which caused awkward questions from the guys at the gym. I still did not understand whether they considered me to be a battered spouse or suffering from acute anemia. Ash never mentioned Caitlin, and I made sure that I didn't either. It was like a classic trick from the textbook of cheating behavior, never recognizing the other woman. But as for me, I just didn't want to rock the boat. It seemed to work, and I felt like I dodged a bullet. The work continued as usual, at least until the end of October. Every year, my company publishes a detailed report on its global projects. No matter how long we extend deadlines and how many reminders we send out, project managers from various charitable organizations always postpone submitting their reports until the last. This means that my team and I have to get up early, go to bed late, and cancel weekends for weeks to meet deadlines. We call it Hell Week. Creative, right? Oh, and did I mention that we're writers? Things had almost returned to normal between Ash and me when a hectic week struck. That Monday, my usual 8-hour day turned into a 12-hour editing marathon. By the time I got home, I felt utterly exhausted. I craved nothing more than a hot shower in my cozy bed. I certainly didn't have the energy to deal with Ashley. But before I could even take off my coat, she unleashed on me. "Where the hell were you?" "What?" I paused, one sleeve half off. "Didn't you see my texts?" "You mean the one text you sent 6 hours ago?" I racked my brain. Had it really been 6 hours since I reminded Ashley I'd be late at the office? Honestly, I couldn't recall. In my foggy state, I realized I had 2 choices. Get into an argument with Ashley that would probably land me on the couch, or try to calm things down, head to bed, and crash. "Was it that long?" I mumbled, finally shedding my coat and fumbling for a hanger in the closet. "I'm sorry, I lost track of time." She tapped her foot impatiently. This wasn't going well. "I'm sure you did." I sighed. "Remember when I told you this is Hell Week, Ash? That my team would be working all day and then some to put together the annual report?" Tap, tap, tap. "Remember when I asked you to keep me posted so I'd know about dinner?" Shit. Yeah. Damn, I'm sorry, Ash. It was chaotic, and I couldn't keep checking my phone. It's going to be like this the whole week. Tap, tap, tap. Was she there? Damn. "The entire team was on deck, including Caitlin," I said, meeting Ashley's gaze with as much sincerity as I could muster, my eyelids feeling like they weighed 40 pounds each. "Ash, I'm really sorry I didn't keep in touch. I've been firefighting for the past 12 hours. And honestly, it's going to be like this until we hit the deadline next Thursday. That's 8 days. 10. Remember last year when I had to work through the weekend? I'll have to do it again this year." I let my shoulders sag. I needed sleep. "Ash, I truly apologize, but this is part of my job. It was before Caitlin joined, and it will be after she's gone." "She's leaving?" The tapping ceased. I let out a dry laugh. "Eventually, you know how it goes. Team members are constantly shuffled around. The only reason I haven't been moved yet is because they don't have anyone else who can edit stories and manage the website." Ashley's expression darkened once more. "But For now, you're still stuck working with her. Yes, darling. I'm still with Caitlin, and Aaron, Kim, Jake, Brandon, and the rest of the team. That's all I'm doing. We reached a compromise. Ashley agreed to calm down, and I promised to respond to her texts promptly, though I managed to negotiate a 10-minute buffer. It was a typical compromise where neither of us was entirely satisfied. I'd be on an electronic leash during our busiest time of the year, and she'd have to manage her jealousy. When we went to bed, she still had a determined look, but she snuggled close and held my hand against her chest. It was still there the next morning when I woke up. A delicate calm settled in our apartment. At work, I felt constantly torn between Ashley's insecurities and an ever-growing pile of editing tasks, no matter how quickly my team and I worked. Based on the previous year, I knew we would soon reach a turning point, though that was still almost a week away. Meanwhile, Ashley was testing boundaries with her texts. At least 10 times a day, a message would appear, forcing me to interrupt my work to respond. Often, I had to momentarily set aside my editing, but a few times she messaged during meetings, prompting me to quickly reply discreetly under the table, hoping no one would notice. Her messages were always harmless, brief notes like, "How's it going?" or "Hope all is well." Yet the implication was clear. I was being closely watched. The timing was also a challenge. Ashley would sometimes initiate texts just a few minutes after I arrived at the office, while other times she waited an hour or more. Occasionally, her messages came in quick succession, but often hours would pass between them. It felt like she was testing me, hoping to catch me off guard, perhaps when Caitlin and I were sneaking a moment together in a supply closet. This routine might have continued until the end of the hectic week, but I made a blunder. My phone charger at home was barely functional, only working if I positioned the cord just right. It was a simple problem to solve, buying a new cord, but during Hell Week with Ashley's texts and the looming annual report, my mental bandwidth was maxed out. When I arrived at the office on Friday morning, my phone was down to 7% battery. Normally, I would have plugged it in right away at my desk, but before I could even take off my coat, Jake rushed over with an urgent issue and I got immediately involved. By the time I had a moment to breathe, it was past noon, and my phone had died. Looking back, the fear I felt upon realizing I had been unreachable for hours should have been a warning sign. But after 4 years with Ashley, I was becoming desensitized to crises. I didn't even find it strange that my heart was racing and panic was setting in as I plugged in my phone. Damn. My phone was completely drained, taking nearly a minute to gain enough charge to turn on. My heart was pounding in my ears. Damn. The phone buzzed briefly as it started up, followed by a series of vibrations indicating a flurry of messages. Damn. The texts ranged from casual to furious to threatening. Seeing that the last message was half an hour ago, it was clear I and my parts were way past the deadline. Damn. I hurriedly tapped the call button, but after just 2 rings, her voicemail picked up. It seemed she was screening my calls. I tried again with the same outcome. On the 3rd attempt, I left a voicemail explaining the situation. Shortly after, I sent a brief text with a similar explanation. There was no response. Another text followed, even shorter. Still, no response. At this juncture, I wrestled with the decision of whether to dash to her office to plead my case or return to work. One option would keep my marriage intact, the other, my job. A critical concern since I would need the paycheck if she decided to kick me out. Either way, I had to wait half an hour for my phone to charge sufficiently. After the flurry of texts, leaving my desk without my electronic lifeline was out of the question. During the wait, I tried to refocus on editing, but my mind was fried and my heart raced. I pondered the unsettling reality that no matter what I did, I couldn't predict Ashley's reaction. It struck me as fundamentally wrong. Despite my resolve not to be held hostage by my wife's volatile temper and peculiar sense of justice, that's exactly what had transpired. Here I was, in the midst of the most demanding week at work, unable to concentrate because of a couple of missed messages and the fear of setting off my wife. Something about this situation felt deeply flawed. I pondered how to communicate this to Ash. What words could I use? How could I convey that I couldn't continue living in fear of her anger? Or that her desire for revenge could potentially destroy our marriage? I briefly considered sending a text, but quickly dismissed the idea. This was a discussion that needed to happen face-to-face, perhaps with a therapist present. As I contemplated how to broach this topic, another text arrived. "It's fine. It's fine." Damn. I'd nearly had a heart attack, and Ashley had spent her last 3 messages ripping me apart. This was far from fine. It's hard to gauge emotions through text, but I guessed either Ash had realized she was overreacting and was letting me off the hook, or more likely she'd already judged me guilty and was planning my punishment. Then it hit me. Regardless of what Ashley meant by her message, there was nothing I could do about it now. Going to see her in person was risky, and trying to calm her down via text was futile. All I could do was brace myself for the storm ahead and hope that when it passed, my marriage, and possibly my sanity, would still be intact. I made a real effort to leave work early, but it was already 8:30 when I finally got home. Exhausted, just like every other night that week, I stood outside my apartment door, took a deep breath, gathered my strength, and went inside. "Honey, I'm home," I called out. "In the kitchen." Her voice sounded normal, which gave me a moment of cautious optimism. Maybe things weren't going to be as bad as I feared. Yet her cheerful tone also raised some concerns. Why wasn't she more upset? Had she already begun her retaliation? Would my dinner be spiked with laxatives? Ipecac? Tax? As I hung up my coat and removed my shoes, I braced myself for the worst. Instead, I found Ashley standing there with a relaxed smile on her face. "Welcome home, honey," she chirped, moving in for a hug. The kiss she gave me was warm, affectionate, and slightly minty. What was going on? I remained on guard. "Hi, love. I'm sorry I missed your texts today. My phone died and—" She grinned at me. "Don't worry about that, sweetheart. You left a message explaining everything." "But—" She reached up and kissed me again. No buts. Mistakes happen. I picked up a new charger on my way home from work. Who was this woman and what had she done with my wife? In hindsight, I should have investigated further, but it was almost 9 p.m. I had just returned home after over 12 hours of work, and after narrowly avoiding one heart attack, I wasn't eager to risk another. I relented with a sigh of relief. "Thank you, Ash. I'll make sure my phone is charged tomorrow," I said. She smiled warmly at me. "Make sure you do, baby." Ash and I had agreed she would handle dinner during a hectic week. She ordered Chinese takeout, and though I picked at it, the day had left me drained, and soon I found myself dozing off over my plate. "I need to hit the sack," I mumbled. "You coming?" She flashed another bright smile. "Maybe in a bit. I want to read for a while." "All right." I shuffled to the bathroom, completed my nightly routine, and collapsed into bed. As I drifted off, I caught a faint whiff of something in the air. Perhaps Febreze? I didn't dwell on it long before sleep overtook me. The following day was Saturday, yet I still had to go to the office. I woke up, showered, and dressed quietly. Before leaving the bedroom, I glanced down at Ashley lying on the bed, wrapped snugly in soft yellow sheets and curled up in a fetal position. She appeared serene. This was another side of her personality, a gentle, vulnerable woman whom I felt compelled to shield. It was a stark contrast to the assertive financial analyst in her dark pantsuit or the confident wife I had seen the previous night wearing a satisfied expression. Wait, satisfied? My good mood deflated. Damn. I shook my head, admonishing myself not to manufacture problems where none existed. I reassured myself that my wallet wasn't missing. My clothes were undisturbed, and there was no reason to worry about tomorrow's troubles when today already posed its challenges. Yet, despite my efforts to push it aside, I couldn't shake the memory of that look in her eyes. Did I really see it there? Ash texted me only 4 times that day, and I made sure to reply promptly. Her messages were all upbeat and casual, no anger or frustration, and she seemed satisfied with my responses. When I returned home that evening, everything appeared normal. Mostly normal, anyway. Her kisses still tasted mintier than usual, and she had ordered lemon chicken from the Greek place. Takeout had become a frequent choice, but I didn't want to start an argument about it. I found myself searching Ashley's eyes for signs of contentment. Maybe I saw a glimmer of it. I couldn't be certain. Exhausted as I was, I wondered if my mind was playing tricks on me. Later, in the bedroom, I noticed the scent of Febreze once more. "Hey, it smells strange in here. Did you spray something?" "Yeah. I think one of the neighbors was smoking. It was really strong." That was odd. Although some neighbors sometimes smoked illegal substances, we usually smelled her in the hallway, not in our bedroom. I shrugged. Mystery solved. Sunday morning started off much like the day before. I woke at 6, showered quietly, and dressed. Glancing at Ashley, wrapped in the pale green sheets, she resembled a mermaid, or perhaps Botticelli's Venus, albeit in a flannel nightgown. I blew her a kiss and headed to the office. Later, it struck me. The sheets yesterday were yellow. Today, they were green. I shrugged it off. We were fairly consistent with changing them, just not on any fixed schedule. Perhaps Ashley simply felt it was time for fresh bedding. That evening followed the familiar routine. Minty kisses, takeout from the corner diner, a hint of Febreze, and a dreamless sleep. Was that a satisfied look on her face? The next morning, another quiet shower, a silent farewell, and a blown kiss to my wife, still asleep in white sheets. At work, realization hit me like a punch. White sheets. I couldn't fathom why Ashley would change the sheets 2 days in a row. Well, not any reason I cared to contemplate. Factor in the Febreze and that possible satisfied expression. And it seemed Ashley was escalating her revenge. If my suspicions were correct, this surpassed the disappearing pants, plunging our marriage into irreparable damage. I briefly questioned whether I truly wanted to uncover the truth, realizing that in this instance, ignorance was not bliss. Unable to live with my suspicions and fearing I couldn't live with my wife if they were confirmed, I swiftly conducted some research and made a purchase on Amazon. Spending $206, expedited shipping included, I ordered a couple of spy cameras. I prayed fervently that my suspicions were unfounded. That evening brought minty kisses, Moroccan takeout, Febreze, and rose-colored sheets. She seemed content. I checked the laundry hamper. It was empty. Damn it. On Monday, amidst the rush of editing, the workload began to ease. The end was in sight. At 11 a.m., I received notification from the mailroom about my delivered package. By noon, work had slowed enough that my departure for an appointment barely registered with my team. Setting up the cameras, cleverly disguised as a smoke detector and an alarm clock, in our bedroom was straightforward. Ashley messaged me 5 times that day. At 5:15 p.m., I received an alert that the cameras had been activated. Apparently, my wife had returned home early. An hour later, Ashley sent her last text of the day. I wanted to uncover the truth, but if the video confirmed my suspicions, I would be forced into a process I had hoped to avoid. I procrastinated at work before deciding not to watch the video until the next day. If my marriage was indeed ending, I could delay facing the conclusion for one more night. I texted Ash, informing her I would be home by 8:30. I wondered if she would be upset, but I found myself unable to muster much concern. My emotions felt muted and distant, as if obscured by a fog. At 8 o'clock, I stumbled home. That night, minty kisses, takeout pizza, Febreze, and a contented smile. Yellow sheets again, which made sense since we only owned 4 sets of bedding. It also explained yesterday's trip to the laundromat. Tossing and turning in bed, I realized that regardless of the outcome, I never wanted to smell Febreze again. The next morning. Ash lay curled up in bed, glowing in the morning light. I gazed at her for a long while. I knew I would miss this. Amidst my insomnia and apprehension, I still felt enveloped in fog. I accepted it, knowing that beyond it lay an ocean of pain. I dressed and showered quietly. I blew Ash a final kiss goodbye. At work, things had settled down for the most part. It would likely take another 2 or 3 days to wrap everything up, but we could finally see the end in sight. Around 11 o'clock, I informed the team that I was heading to the quiet space, a conference room furnished by the company with couches, chairs, and a few small tables. It felt like a corporate version of a college study lounge, and it was the only place where I could privately watch the videos from my bedroom. The only other person present was Kim, a colleague of mine. She was comfortably seated in an armchair by the windows, engrossed in her laptop. I opted for the couch on the opposite side of the room. If the videos revealed what I anticipated, I wanted to have my back against the wall. My intention was to listen to the videos rather than watch them. I figured that seeing Ashley with another man would make it incredibly difficult to forgive her, and I didn't want to prematurely close off any possibilities, including the chance of reconciliation. So, I put on my headphones, started playing the video from the smoke detector, and kept the screen out of sight. From what I heard, everything was exactly as terrible as I feared. The camera turned on when moving and started recording as soon as they entered the room. I heard the rustle of clothes and laughter, followed by a strangely familiar voice. He showed Ash his instrument, and Ash expressed surprise. The whole further process was accompanied by his satisfied comments. Somewhere in the middle, I recognized the voice. It was Winslow Hubble. Everything swam in front of my eyes, and I closed my eyes, and tears flowed down my face. I felt empty and confused. I won't claim that Ash works in an office full of Chippendales models, but in the testosterone-saturated environment of Pierce and Bateman, there was no shortage of muscular bodies, strong jaws, and beautiful faces. And yet, instead of choosing a sample of office attractiveness, Ash chose the least attractive, greasiest cull to sleep with. It didn't make sense. Judging by the sounds of my wife and the squeaking in the background, she and Ash had reached the main event. I didn't expect Ash to defend me, and she didn't. Ash gave him exactly what he wanted. They humiliated and despised me. It's incredibly hard to hear that you're not that good in bed, especially when you're compared to a worthless person like Winslow Hubble. I glanced at the clock on the wall, staring blankly at the numbers as the second hand ran around the dial. It's only been 20 minutes since I started the video. My mind is fixated on this figure, repeating it over and over again. 20 minutes to the end of my marriage. 20 minutes. Wait, 20 minutes? 20 minutes. Considering how long it took them to prepare, how much time do they have left? 5 minutes? 10? Ashley and Winslow's voice still echoed in my ears. Then he asked, "So, are you going to do it again?" Ashley's playful voice replied, "What do you think?" "I think you're a dirty girl." My stomach clenched into a ball. Ashley made a sound. I felt that she was smiling without even seeing her face. "Does it turn you on, thinking about how my husband does this to me after you?" she teased. Winslow chuckled. "Your ideal husband. Every Thursday I see him and Marty talking, looking at us as if it's like they're judging us. It's like they think they're so smart that they're way superior to each other. I wonder what he would say if he knew I was here and taking care of you." She burst out laughing. "Don't you dare." "Don't worry, my dear. I'm not going to risk it. Or your marriage, for that matter." I closed the laptop and paused the video. The camera focused on the two of them. Winslow looked flushed and sweaty, his mouth slightly open, his eyes half closed. Ashley was lying next to him, the sheet pulled up to her neck, her eyes glittering with smug amusement. That gaze, I couldn't understand it. 20 minutes? In all the years that we've been together, I thought I'd learned enough about Ashley, including that She prefers unhurried intimacy. But what I saw on the recording didn't look like what she usually liked. There was clearly something else here. I had to watch the video. From the sounds I heard, it seemed like my marriage had already fallen apart, and I couldn't imagine how much worse things could get. Maybe, I thought gloomily, I can discover something new for myself. I played the video back to the moment they entered the bedroom. A little less than 19 minutes. Then I clicked play. I've heard stories about the Nixon and Kennedy debates. Apparently, those who listened on the radio convinced Nixon of victory, while the viewers were sure that Kennedy had won. Watching Ash and Winslow, I finally realized this phenomenon. Here's my opinion. Some people claim that there is no such thing as bad pizza or bad intimacy. But after those 19 minutes, I would suggest they have dinner at Sparrow, sleep with Winslow Hubble, and then share their thoughts with me. From the very beginning, Ashley took the initiative into her own hands. Watching her with Winslow, I realized that I was attending a masterclass in intimacy. Every glance, every barely perceptible smile and smirk was aimed at convincing him that he really was an irresistible ladies' man. But it was all a sham. As I mentioned, Ashley's figure often appeared in my dreams, and for good reason. She was a pleasure to look at. She looked like a masterpiece. Think of Botticelli's Venus or Leighton's Acta, even reminiscent of Marilyn Monroe from Playboy. Winslow, on the other hand, hardly looked human. His pale, loose flesh resembled cottage cheese, oily and with a slight gray tinge. Seeing these two together was like watching a manatee trying to court a statue of the Madonna. I couldn't help myself. I burst out laughing, despite the tears still running down my cheeks. Ash was here, taking revenge on me for some imaginary insult by exposing herself to something so unpleasant that she had to mentally pull away. And then there was Winslow, who fancied himself the Lord of the universe, claiming prey from a less dominant male and loudly declaring his superiority over the poor guy he was cuckolding. And so I, the unfortunate cuckold, stood and watched as my wife took out what was clearly a garbage disposal, loudly urging her partner to hurry up. At that moment, I understood why Ash chose Vinny. It wasn't because of desire or attraction, quite the opposite. She chose him because he was comfortable, available, and unlikely to develop into a long-term relationship. Most importantly, Ashley knew that intimacy with him would not give her pleasure. If she had chosen one of the handsome, muscular men from her office for revenge, it would not have been divine retribution, but simple treason. So, instead of engaging in intimacy for pleasure, she engaged in it out of a sense of duty. Instead of choosing the partner she desired, she chose the one who disgusted her. She hurt herself to hurt me, too. I understood Ash's arguments, at least to some extent I respected them, but I couldn't accept them. But by turning Ashley's justice into a joke, I've minimized its dark undertones. The truth was that my wife had committed an extremely harmful act, fully aware that it would undermine our marriage and finances and also make me, the man she said she loved, feel unsafe in my own home. Now she has subjected me to a much harsher punishment than searching my closet. Everything else, whether I deserved to be betrayed, whether I would ever find out about it, didn't matter. The important thing was that she did it, and judging by the satisfied expression on her face, she didn't doubt her decision for a second. What other punishments would she consider justified? Seriously, what could follow treason? What if we had children? Could I risk them becoming pawns in her vendetta, victims of her notions of justice? Looking at Ashley lying next to Winslow, I realized that I no longer felt safe with her. Not in our closet, not in our relationship, not even in the bed she had defiled. Although I appreciated that she had changed the bed linen, it did not negate the fact that she had let this pig, this disgusting symbol of privilege, into our house. If she started on Friday, as I suspected, then she has already betrayed me 5 times in our bed, and she planned to do it again today. I realized I couldn't return home that night or any night soon. After witnessing what I knew I had to confront her. Given her beliefs about my alleged infidelity and her intense desire for justice, I couldn't predict her reaction. What's the fitting retaliation for divorce? And how does it change when another 50% is added? The only question was when to inform her. The angel on my shoulder urged me to text her immediately. He preached about mercy not being strained, divine forgiveness, and advised me to let her know before she encountered Winslow again. The devil on the opposite shoulder murmured that refraining from punishment didn't mean I shouldn't let her suffer for herself. At 5:20, my phone buzzed. By 6:30, I texted her, including video evidence. I informed her I'd be staying with Aaron, a colleague. 2 days later, I initiated divorce proceedings. As I mentioned earlier, Ashley's forgiveness didn't take long. After watching the 5-minute video, I struggled to imagine a harsher punishment than being associated with Winslow Hubble. Ashley's obsession not only destroyed our friendship and marriage, but also robbed her of any chance of promotion at Pierce Bateman. Despite the fact that she had previously joked about missing our apartment and promotion, I knew that she deeply mourned the breakup of our relationship. I think we both realized that we were the real prey. While I sympathized with Ashley, my feelings for Winslow Hubble were pure contempt. From my conversations with Marty and the rumors that circulated during happy hour, I realized that his wealth and privileges had protected him for many years. In fact, whenever Vinny ran into trouble, his prep school friends, fraternity brothers, and Dad's checkbook helped him solve the problem. I have considered the usual revenge scenarios and have come to the conclusion that none of them is feasible. If I had openly opposed him, his parents would have made sure that the consequences would ruin me, and possibly Ash. As for Winslow, he would most likely have remained a carefree seal, oblivious to the chaos he caused. I was tormented by a dilemma: how to punish a man who has everything. At night, lying in bed, I remembered Winslow's taunts in the videos. His insults, statements about dominating me, his constant need to prove his superiority. Then it dawned on me: I could learn something from Winslow Hubble. It would take time and careful research, but why not? I no longer spent nights at home with my wife. I dialed his number 6 months later. Winslow agreed to meet me at 3 Olives, the venue for their Thursday night gatherings. I deliberately broke all the rules. I chose a bar Winslow frequented where he would feel completely at ease. Arriving 5 minutes late, I allowed him time to settle in and order his first drink. Anticipating he'd be in one of his custom-tailored suits, courtesy of his parents' tailor, I opted for comfy jeans, a blue blazer, and a simple white shirt. I deliberately left my hair slightly tousled and skipped shaving to maintain a 5 o'clock shadow. I aimed to cultivate Winslow's perception of me as inferior and reinforced that impression at every turn. When I arrived at the table, Winslow was exactly as I had pictured. A power tie with a grand Windsor knot, a pinstriped suit, a Brooks Brothers shirt, and cufflinks. His hooded eyes scrutinized my casual attire, absorbing every detail. He saw himself as the dominant figure in a prestigious men's establishment, facing a man he had outclassed. He felt invincible, just as I had intended. He remained seated without rising to greet me. "Winslow," I said, dropping my backpack and taking a seat. "Chucky," he smiled. "Long time no see." "It's been a while, yeah. Just a moment." I gestured to the waitress and placed my order while Winslow eyed me disapprovingly. Evidently, one does not ignore their betters when ordering a gin and tonic. After she departed, I turned back to him. "Winnie, thanks for meeting me." He flushed at the nickname. "I don't have much time," he snapped. "So why am I here exactly?" Honestly, I needed closure. He sneered and played with his martini glass. "I would have thought the divorce handled that." "Yes, the divorce brought closure between Ash and me." I nodded towards him. "But you and I still have unfinished business." Winslow chuckled. "I can't imagine what that might be." "Your wife chose another man. A better man. And you couldn't resist." "Why should I? Ashley is stunning." His eyes gleamed. "And quite talented in bed." Besides, she made it clear you weren't meeting her needs. We'll circle back to that. After I found out about you two, revenge crossed my mind. With Ashley, it was straightforward. We divorced, and I haven't seen her since. We had a good marriage that she destroyed. That's her burden to carry. I took a sip of my drink. But you were a tougher puzzle to crack. What do you mean? Here's the situation, Vinny. You're protected. Let's say I use the obvious method and beat you up. His eyes widened, and he slowly took his hands off the table. I'm sure I could do it, and maybe it would even be nice. But I would barely have had time to clean up before your parents put me in jail. I looked at his hands in his lap. Besides, you're probably one of those people whose mom and dad make sure that you have a panic button. If I had tried to do anything, I would have been lucky to land a couple of punches before the hired guards knocked me to the floor. Winston blushed and pointedly put his hands back on the table, taking a long sip from his glass. So you're not going to attack me? No, and the same goes for your murder. I'm sure I could find someone to do it for me. Maybe I could even save up for a professional who could make you disappear. I suppressed a smile when I saw the expression on his face. It was important to keep a serious look. But then I would have faced the same problem. Your parents would have hired investigators for sure, and I would have to worry about any traces left by my mercenary. Sooner or later, he would have been caught. He would have turned on me. And then I would have ended up in prison again, this time on a murder charge and with much less money for my defense. Why not just let it go? I'm sure I could. I cut him off. I was thinking about revenge. Sending a video of you to your friends, parents, colleagues. Winslow's complexion paled. But what's the point? Your parents already know who you are. They've been cleaning up after you for years. And if they caught wind of me tarnishing your reputation, I scoffed, I'd probably be out of a job. And my next gig? Likely asking, would you like fries with that? Winslow leaned in. So, are you going to let it go? Not quite. I pulled a folder from my backpack and placed it on the table. I realize there's one thing I can do. But before we discuss that, have you ever thought about how much your parents have protected you? I don't think. No, I doubt you have. I flipped over a couple of photos from the folder. When I was plotting my revenge, I did extensive research. It's astonishing what you uncover with time and seething anger. Remember Mary Gray and Danielle Brennan? Shock flickered across Winslow's face, though he tried to remain composed. I don't recall. Perhaps I met them in college. I chuckled. Don't underestimate yourself, Winnie. You did more than just meet them. In fact, you're the reason they both dropped out and moved back home. Flipping over the first picture, I saw a pale, black-haired woman holding a toddler. This might jog your memory. Mary had a baby about 6 months after leaving school. He looked a lot like you, at least until he lost the baby fat. She managed to finish her degree at a local college, though. According to her Facebook posts, they're both doing well. He scoffed, but I noticed sweat starting to bead on his forehead. There's no way to prove that baby's mine, he stammered. Don't worry, Mary won't testify against you. Young William, however, didn't sign any non-disclosure agreement, and his DNA pretty much seals the deal on paternity. I raised an eyebrow at him. I wouldn't count on a political career. Winslow's complexion reddened, his demeanor growing clammy. So this is your idea of payback, he scoffed. Speculation and insinuation? Settle in, Winnie, we're just beginning. I turned over the next photograph. It depicted a less cheerful scene, a woman with limp blonde hair, sunken cheeks, and haunted eyes. Danielle was harder to track down, only managed to speak with her parents. Apparently, after she left school, she spiraled into depression. He tried to do something terrible to himself several times. He went pale. You can't seriously think I had anything to do with that. You and a few of your frat brothers. True, there's no concrete evidence, The hospital's blood tests and rape kit mysteriously vanished, and she signed an NDA. But we both know your involvement." He pushed back from the table, as if fearing the photographs might scorch him. "You can't prove a damn thing." "Not in court, no." I stared him down until he looked away. "But we both know the truth, Winnie. Did you know she hasn't dated since you? Her mother says she's afraid to leave the house. Still wakes up screaming." Winslow jumped up, surprising everyone with his speed. "I don't need to hear this," he whispered sharply. "I'm out of here." Hold on," I countered. I took a thumb drive from my pocket and tapped it on the table. "Sit down, Winnie," I insisted. "Finish your drink. Order another. We have more to discuss, and you stand to lose a lot." "Go ahead. Show it to my boss," he scoffed, his laugh unnervingly high-pitched. Hell, show Marty. She won't leave me." "Maybe she will. Maybe she won't mind speaking to Danielle. Not that she goes by that name anymore." I stared at him intently. "Your parents really put the fear of God into her." Winnie sank back into his chair. "You've got 10 minutes, he muttered, loosening his tie and undoing the top button of his shirt. His collar was damp with sweat. "Stop the games, Winnie. I've got all the time I need. Because you've got something at stake, just like I did." Our eyes met briefly before he looked away, avoiding my gaze. "Hang in there, buddy. We're just getting started." Watching him on the verge of tears, I thought of Ash for a moment. I wondered if this was how she felt when plotting her revenge. I can see how one could get addicted to this. I took a deep breath and moved on to the next part. "It's interesting you brought up your job, Winnie. You're correct. They wouldn't dismiss you over Mary and Danielle. In fact, not even Ashley would cost you your job, though it would certainly complicate things for her. Unlike you, she relies on her position. And unlike you, she's not invulnerable. If news of your little rendezvous got out, she'd be ruined. You, on the other hand, would likely walk away unscathed." I chuckled. "Short of robbing a bank, you'll probably stay at Pierce Bateman until they wheel you out." "What are you insinuating?" He folded his arms, attempting to appear stern, but to me it seemed more like a defensive posture. Winslow was all vulnerability. "You really don't know?" I swirled my gin and tonic. "What about the Goldfarb account?" "What about it?" "You cost the company $500,000 due to a mistake even an intern could have caught. Ever wonder why you weren't fired?" The facade cracked. It wasn't my fault. It was the secretary." I shrugged. Yes, a scapegoat took the hit for you. She received compensation and a glowing recommendation. She's now at Babbitt and Gollum, apparently content." "All right, Chucky," he retorted. "If you're so informed, tell me why I wasn't terminated." "Do you truly not know?" I scrutinized his expression. "Isn't it obvious, Winnie? Who always shields you? Who always bails you out?" Recognition dawned on him. "There it is. You've got it." I observed another fragment of Winslow Hubble crumble. "No, they couldn't." "Would it surprise you to learn that your parents transferred $30 million to their account at Pierce Bateman a week after the Goldfarb incident?" His expression turned to horror. "And that's on top of the $150 million already there," he stuttered. "No, they never. They're funding your salary, Winnie. Through brokerage fees, transactions, commissions, profit sharing, and various other payments, I suspect your parents are even sweetening the deal to keep you on board." "I handle some of the firm's major accounts," I chuckled. He truly didn't grasp it. "Winnie, really. You push papers on those accounts, and I bet someone's watching to make sure you don't botch it too badly. You're essentially Pierce, Bateman's highest-paid intern. Most of their secretaries have higher-risk roles than you." "I, the vice president," he exclaimed, raising his voice. "Your wife reports to me." I spoke softly, as if I were addressing a child or a wounded animal. "You will remain vice president as long as your parents keep their money at Pierce, Bateman. Heck, if they invest enough money, you might even become a senior vice president or an executive director. But you will never rise above the level of a glorified bureaucrat. I took a sip from my glass. As for Ash, I'm willing to bet that her reporting to you involves nothing more than sending a few emails to someone with real power. He smiled nervously. I had enough power to put your wife to bed, Cook. Ah, that's it. I expected such impudence. I smiled at him. It seemed to unsettle him. And now we come to the main question. Ready, Winslow? Yes. You slept with my wife, in my own bed. Was it 4 times? 5? 6? Then I struck. How many times since then? Winslow's face fell as I continued. It's been 1.5 years, Winnie. How many times has my ex, who was so charmed by your charm, invited you back to her bed? Let's simplify it. How many times has she kissed you? Did she dance with you? Did she send you gentle messages? This after the divorce she said she didn't want to complicate things. You can't be that dumb, Winnie. We've been divorced for 1 year now. We've been living separately for 1.5 years. I grinned at him. And by the way, the water was crystal clear. I have a video of both of you in my bedroom. It's like Mr. Plum in the greenhouse with a candlestick. And after I moved out, you could engage in intimacy. Every night and twice on Saturdays. The only reason you're not together right now is because she doesn't really want your oily skin touching hers. Go to hell, you idiot, he shouted. She liked what I did to her. I was much better than you. I leaned back in my chair. You know, when I was watching the two of you together, I noticed something interesting, Vinny. I thought you talked a lot about me. He blinked. What are you... What? Watch the video. It's amazing how often your conversations revolved around me and humiliating me. What are you... He was breathing heavily. I'm doing this better than her cuckold little husband. He tried to put on a triumphant smile. It didn't work out for him. I chuckled. Here it is. A wonderful guy. You often repeated this in the video. You see, the thing is, when most men find themselves next to a beautiful woman, they can't stop talking about her. What a gorgeous face she has. You know what's going on. But almost as soon as you're in the room with Ashley, you start talking about me. What? I was winning. I'm what? I shook my head. God. No wonder they hired you as an intern. Let me be clear. You are beautiful, a woman, and that's it. You could to talk. Oh, this is mine, a tool. No, stop it. I don't... His face turned crimson. The way I touch her. How are you taking away what was once mine now? Shut up! Stop it. Stop it now, he shouted. Doesn't that seem strange to you, Winnie? It certainly seems damn strange to me. He covered his ears. Stop calling me Vinny, you worthless fool. He appeared utterly exhausted, as if he had just completed a marathon. He gasped for breath, each intake tinged with a wheeze that hinted at tears. Curled up tightly, eyes shut, hands covering his ears, he looked distraught. I glanced at the waitress who was conversing with a man in a suit, likely the manager. I signaled for the check. I'm not, he groaned. I'm not passing any judgment, Winnie. Just describing what I witnessed. What you'll see when you watch that video. I studied his wrecked appearance. It's not a major issue, Winnie. It's like a preference for blondes or curvy women. Accept it and move forward. But I'm not, he whimpered. No condemnation here, Winnie, not for that anyway. I finished my drink and placed the glass down. But as for the rest, growing up without a father, lives in ruins, marriages wrecked, a fake job funded by your parents? Yeah, I'm judging you harshly for that. His face looked swollen, flushed, and sweaty. His tie was a mess of knots. His eyes pleaded desperately. What about the video? You're not going to give it to Marty, are you? I couldn't help but laugh. Winnie, Marty's had the video for 1 year. I gave her a copy right after the divorce was finalized. This one's for you. I pushed the thumb drive across the table to him. What? But she hasn't said anything. Not a word. Winnie, I wouldn't dare speculate why Marty stayed with you or why she came to you in the first place. I don't know what deals she made to leave Pittsburgh, and I'm not one to judge. I took out another thumb drive from my pocket. As for why she stuck around, maybe it was loyalty. Love? Or maybe it's because your prenup promises her $500,000 if she stays married to you for 5 years. Your 5-year anniversary was, what, 2 weeks ago? 3, he muttered. Yeah, I'm not great with dates. Congratulations and best wishes for many more happy years. But before I go, this is for you. I slid the second drive across the table. It's a video I put together. Let's call it Chucky and Mrs. X. Her face isn't visible, and we blurred all the distinguishing features, but I think you'll recognize her voice. I paused, picked up my backpack. Then again, maybe not. She does a lot of moaning and screaming. Funny thing is, the video's 2 hours long, and I'm pretty sure I didn't mention you once.